if we don't take ownership of ourselves and our journey in what we can do, then it just means that we continue to pass on different levels of trauma, essentially, without even realizing it.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of Naturally You Radio. My name's Leah, I'm the Naturally You coach. And today we are joined by the lovely Jannelle, who is a therapist, and we are going to be focusing on mental and emotional health for Black women. And specifically, we're going to be talking about trauma. So let's get straight into it. Jannelle, welcome to the Naturally You Radio.
Hi, Leah. Thank you. Great to be here.
Could you introduce yourself to our audience, please, and let everybody know who you are and what it is that you do and why it is that you do the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, my name's Jannelle. I am a trauma therapist and I work specifically with people to help them to stop abandoning themselves because a lot of the time that's what trauma is rooted in. You know, we abandon parts of ourselves in order to show up and be acceptable to what other people tell us is acceptable, essentially. So, when I say about abandoning ourselves, it might be, around perfectionism. It might be around if you make mistakes. It might be around if you have broken relationships, if you keep engaging in relationships that do not serve you and you can't figure out why, all of those things lead back to trauma, essentially. So understanding what that is and understanding how it relates to you is how I help people to kind of start living intentionally, really and truly. So, yeah.
So, as far as like Black women are concerned, and we're both based in the UK, there are listeners from, around the world and stuff like that, but um I think it's pretty commonplace worldwide, wherever you're listening to this, sisters. Um, Black women
Mm.
have we have experienced trauma. I mean, I know in the work that I do as a nutritionist and focused more on like physical health, things like diabetes and high blood pressure and cholesterol and eating disorders and all those kind of things. As much as we know that there's like disproportion in it, as far as race is concerned, Black women are disproportionately more likely to get X, Y, and Z. And there's, biological that, there's not even biological reasons for that. I'm becoming a lot more aware that like PTSD has got a big role to play in that. Like the trauma we're carrying from slavery and from Jim Crow and from the Windrush and all of those kind of traumas have got a huge impact on us right now. How do you see that playing out? How do you see kind of trauma affecting the Black women that you're working with?
Well, one of the things, even to the first thing that comes to mind is acknowledging that it didn't start with us.
Mm,
There's a lot of things that have happened in the past that have had really horrible, I don't even know, horrible isn't
yeah.
even the word I'm looking for, but whatever is worse than horrible, the effect has been absolutely wild on, our parents, grandparents, and so on. So there's going to be a lot of that trauma that they experienced that has been passed down, if not directly through repetitive behavior, it's actually been indirectly through, those our mums, dads, whoever, really trying not to repeat the patterns and ending up repeating or creating a different pattern.
Mm.
So something I think is really important to keep in mind is that it didn't start with us, like the trauma that we are sometimes carrying, it's not ours. It wasn't our fault. It wasn't for us to resolve. But actually, if we don't take ownership of ourselves and our journey in what we can do, then it just means that we continue to pass on different levels of trauma, essentially, without even realizing it.
So how would we see, or what examples are there of things that didn't start with us that could be affecting us right now without us knowing it, or maybe attributing it to something else?
Yeah. I mean, well, the obvious thing is like being beaten.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
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 And like when people are in my like in a therapy space with me, sometimes they feel like you know, oh, can I tell her? Can I say it? And I think that's one
Mm.
of the beauty things of working with Black women in particular, that there is a part of them that is like, I think she knows. I think she knows that this happened, and it doesn't happen to everyone, don't get me wrong, but that's one of the things that was normalized in so many of our cultures, so many of the ways that, discipline was enforced and punishment was enforced on us. And then we get to a place which is the other end of the spectrum to maybe say, I will never beat my kids, which is, it makes sense,
Mm.
but it's not replaced with anything. So then it ends up being, okay, I'll never do this, but you haven't said, okay, well, this is how I'm going to approach it instead, because we don't necessarily know what the alternative is, which would be empower my kids to speak up when something isn't right, empower them to say what they want to do, what they don't want to do. And part of that, even to go further, is about, respecting your elders.
Mm.
I think there are a lot of conversations that are had between children and parents, essentially, where it's not a disrespect, but it's more just that you taught me to speak up for myself, and now I'm doing it. You're telling me that it's disrespectful.
Yeah.
So I think it's layered. It's multi-layered, but that's one of the things that is passed down in so many different
Mm.
levels of our culture, that you don't necessarily see that, okay, that thing was not what I want to do, but we also don't know what else to do. So our children end up doing, something completely different to what we did. And we're like, but I didn't beat them. So you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you're like, well, that was my benchmark.
Yes.
But we have to also learn that there's a different way of doing things, and give ourselves permission to learn that a lot of the time through the relationships that we have with ourselves.
Mm.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, as a mother, I did make the decision to not beat the children at all.
Mhm.
However, my programming is my childhood, and yeah, there are times where I'm like, I don't know what else to do but beat this youth because what like I haven't been taught it. I'm having to learn it right now. Like I saw a post that said millennials have got the joy of trying to heal themselves, heal their parents, and heal their children all at the same time because we're in the information age where we're getting this information. So now we feel responsible for dealing with it with everyone. Um,
Mhm.
and whilst I've never beaten the children, there are a lot of times when I'm like, I'm gonna beat this you
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I don't know what else to do. But I'm gonna beat this you.
yeah. That's it. That's
And it's
it.
very frustrating. And then also when, again, because of the modeling I've had, when they do, you know, not answer back, but when they are expressing themselves, if they do it in a, and they're children, so they're still learning, but when they do it in a way that's not necessarily tactful, not that a
Mhm.
child should be expected to be tactful. Again, that voice activates in my mind, like, are you going to let this you talk to you like this? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so how do we, firstly, just because, you know, just because me and you are talking about it like it's like everyone knows it,
Hmm.
there are still some children being beaten.
Yeah,
That is, there are some sisters out there, some families out there who still feel that's a very appropriate way to discipline their children, and there isn't going to be a consequence to that because that's what they experience. Can you just share your professional opinion on what the impact of beating, what our impact was when we were beaten, and the impact that it's going to have on our children if we continue to use that as a form of discipline?
yeah. Absolutely. You know, people who use it as a form of discipline, obviously, more times than not, are in survival mode. Like you said, you're thinking, it's my programming, I can feel it coming in, and I'm like, if I don't do this, then something else is going to happen. So, with me, especially in my practice, there's no shame. Let's just look at actually what's happening, as opposed to thinking about whether it's right or wrong. And don't get me wrong, I do believe beating children is wrong, but I understand that when people do it, it's out of, I don't know what else to do. And usually coming from a place of, I really want you to learn this thing because I'm scared that if you don't, the world will eat you up,
Mm,
essentially. So that's one of the things I want to make clear. But then also then thinking about, if we are stepping out of survival mode and considering the impact that being beaten or punished really harshly by our own parents, the impact that that has had on our relationship with them, I think that's probably going to give you um, more understanding as to the impact that it has on the relationship. Because a lot of us, I say a lot of us, especially in the UK, I would say, based on my very limited understanding in that, I would say that there are a lot of broken relationships with our parents.
Mm.
Not necessarily because of beating, there's a whole range of things that will break down that relationship. But a lot of us try not to repeat the patterns that our parents did. We try to do better. We try to do the thing that was just that much better at least. Because however they did things in many ways, or some things, it didn't work for us. So that's the impact. Whether it's right or wrong is one thing, but whether it gets you what you really want, which is usually a healthy relationship and your child to be able to show up for themselves and not be afraid of the world, is another.
So,
Yeah.
um, what other kind of ways does trauma that didn't start with us, could that be showing up in our lives right now without us, again, unbeknownst to us and affecting the way that we're functioning?
Yeah. The next thing I think about actually is just the relationship we have with ourselves. We don't necessarily talk enough about the struggles that we experience. When we're younger, when we were younger, especially thinking millennials, we didn't see our parents, or some people anyway, didn't see our parents engage in the rest. We didn't rest.
Nope.
If they were resting, it was because they were
Yeah.
sick.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that's one of the things, especially, even something that's, yeah, kind of like more of a low-hanging fruit. We didn't see them rest. We didn't see them enjoy, unless it was like at a party and they're letting loose and dancing till the night is over, not until the last beat of the song has dropped, they're not going home, kind of thing. So something like that, I think definitely in what I've seen in Black women is that we don't realize that it's okay to make rest a part of that process because we didn't see our parents rest, but we also sometimes feel guilty for doing it,
Mm,
thinking that potentially we're going to miss something, we're going to miss an opportunity. Well, my mom or dad didn't rest, or so if I do feel like I have to rest, then that means I'm weak.
mm,
And we end up going in this cycle until we burn out and end up in the same position, being I'm sick and I can't do it, you
yeah.
know? And I think another part of that not resting and giving and showing up and potentially wearing a mask as well, is that we burn out so much quicker.
Mm,
There's not many places that Black women can just be themselves in the world, essentially. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a part of this, because let's just learn to be ourselves in the spaces that allow us to be. And I'm not against, you know, consciously having a mask on, doing it on purpose, as opposed to doing it and not knowing that you're doing it. Because it's part of the survival mode, recognizing, okay, this space isn't safe for me. So I'm going to show up in the way that I feel safest, because it might be that you still embrace exactly who you are,
yeah.
but you might not be ready to deal with the consequence of showing your full self
Mm,
and still learning how to do that. So I say, be honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself, essentially. Like that's another thing.
mm. So, what is the difference between, because obviously we've spoken about like big traumas from childhood and things like that. Um,
Mm.
People talk about like big T trauma and little T trauma. What is the difference between those kind of traumas?
Well, I mean, first of all, just recognizing what trauma is,
Mm,
first of all, trauma is not necessarily what's happened to you, it's the effects that it's had on you. So I could have stumped my toe when I was a child and nobody was there for me. And that could develop a trauma. I could have, had like a huge thing such as, I don't know, violence, witnessing violence, experiencing abuse, those things. And I was like, oh, well, I understand why that's happening. And it might not have had an impact.
Mm,
But the trauma is what happens inside that person, not what has happened in that person. So you might notice, sometimes with children, they if they're given the right support to understand a certain situation, yes, it's going to have an effect on them, but it won't potentially be the subconscious that drives their behaviors. Okay. So trauma is something that happens in us, not to us. So the big T trauma are the things that are usually quite obvious, the abuse, the neglect, those things that people can usually pinpoint and say, yes, that's what happened. Loss,
mm,
losing parents at an early age, maybe being in the foster care system that and you didn't have people who were looking out for you in the way that they should have been. Those kind of things are like big T. The small T traumas are things that the way that I think about it the most would be sometimes the things that didn't happen as opposed to the things that did. So when you were sad, who did you talk to? No one. I didn't talk to anyone. Oh, how comes? I didn't talk to anyone because mum was busy. She was doing XYZ. Dad was doing blah, blah, blah. So I didn't feel like I could talk to anyone. So, okay. So what happens now when you need to talk to someone? No, I don't. I recluse. I keep myself to myself until it's safe enough to come out again. Those are kind of things that are more of a small T trauma because in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of like, well, nothing significant happened that I
right.
can pinpoint and say, yeah, that definitely happened,
Mm.
but it still had an effect on you.
Thank you. So, okay. Is there a place for where do we strike the balance between um self-soothing or what is kind of yeah where do we strike the balance between being able to self-soothe ourselves because obviously in most people's lives they've got multiple things going on, they've got work, they may have a family, they've got hobbies, they've got studies with lots of things going on. We're not going to and experiencing trauma and experiencing the trauma we've experienced and the challenges that we face and all these things are going to have an impact on our mental health and they can all develop into the traumas of how we feel about all the things that are happening to us and in anyone's life they're not always going to be able to stop and get the help that they need and all those kind of things. So learning how to for us to self-soothe is a useful thing to do
Mhm,
and not we obviously understand telling people to just get on with it is ineffective and it's uncaring and unkind and all the things, but there are going to be obviously some times where you do need to learn how to self-soothe, but then I feel that some women have self-soothed so much they've started to self-abandon, and right at the beginning before we started talking, that's one of the first things you spoke about was self-abandonment. So,
mhm,
how do we strike the balance between learning how to self-soothe and self-soothing and not just abandoning ourselves entirely?
mhm. Sometimes when I talk about developing a healthy relationship with yourself, that that sounds like the whole story, you know, develop a healthy relationship with yourself and then that's it. That's it. But that's not the end of the story. It's developing a healthy relationship with yourself so that then you can go out and create connections with people that you actually want, not who you need. There's a big difference in that. There's a difference because when we operate from a place of need, sometimes we end up in situations um, taking less than what we deserve or accepting less than what we deserve. Whereas when your cup is full, you probably heard this loads and loads of times, you can pour from your overflow. Okay. So then you can choose and you say, actually, this is my shop. I'm setting it up. This is what I'm selling. If you don't want anything I got here, then it's okay. You can go because I know that I've got me. So that means I can choose who's here and who's not. Okay. So when you bring in to the conversation the idea of abandoning yourself because you've kind of shut everybody out, you're kind of trying to do it by yourself, essentially, do everything by yourself. That's still your trauma playing a role. You know, I've definitely been, the one to say, it's okay, I'm not going to ask. I'll just do it myself. I'm fine, you know, because it's easier to some degree because I'm like, I can control those variables. I can control it. I don't need anyone to help me because I can't control how they do it. They do it how I
Yes.
want them to do it. But operating from a place that says I can do it all by myself. I don't need to be, around anyone. I don't need to share time. We are definitely um like relational beings naturally. So if we're in that space where we start to shut other people out, that is also a self-abandonment because naturally we enjoy people around us.
Mm,
But obviously it has to be the right kind of person. The people that we choose to be around us, not the people that are around us where we feel like we don't have a choice whether they're here or not, you know? One of the things that I was thinking about the other day is essentially like lots of people don't understand the idea of extrovert versus introvert
mm,
versus ambivert. Okay, so an extrovert is someone who essentially gets a lot of energy from being around other people.
right.
That's where they get their energy. That's where they're like, yeah, great, great. An introvert is someone who kind of gets their energy from being alone, having that quiet time, not having to perform, not having to think about somebody else, just being alone. I would class myself as an ambivert because I can be a social butterfly. I can be all over the place. I could be smiling, dancing. You will think that I just love to be around people all the time, but that is not the case. I need my time alone. I need my time to recoup. I need my time to rebalance and realign with myself. So I enjoy both. And I think sometimes when it comes to um, operating from a place of self-abandonment and operating from a place of trauma, we think that shutting down is the only thing. We think that, okay, I only can be myself when I'm by myself.
Right.
That's
So,
kind of what I think about when I think, self-abandonment and all
yeah,
of the small little bits, different ways that it kind of plays a role in telling us that we need to be alone, we need to do it by ourselves. And it can be kind of scary sometimes because we're like, well, when I'm around people, they just irritate me. But you
mm.
can be both.
So how does trauma make us self-abandon ourselves? Because some people might say, well, because I was treated so badly or bad things happened to me in the past, now I'm in control of my life. I can do all the things. I can do all the things because I'm not in that situation that I was in before. But you're saying that there is a link between self-abandonment and trauma. What is that link? Why would trauma cause someone to abandon themselves?
Mhm. Well, it's about survival. When we operate from a place of trauma, we're operating from a place that says, I'm not safe. When we're growing up, every single one of us, our parents are going to be like, okay, do this, don't do this, whether they say it explicitly or we learn through observation. Okay, be this way, don't be that way. When so and so is judging whoever, the neighbor down the road for, I don't know, having blue hair, that tells us, okay, don't ever have blue hair
Mm,
because we're so susceptible. We're trying to impress our parents. We're trying to do what they want us to do essentially until like there's a point where we're like, this isn't really what I want. But it takes a really long time for someone to be able to recognize this isn't really what I want.
mm,
So in those times when, you know, we're told, be this way, be that way. Otherwise, essentially, I'm going to not love you anymore. Or the idea is that I'm not going to love you anymore. For a child to believe, this is always talking about trauma, I go back to, okay, that childlike self.
Yeah.
A child believes that if I disappoint my parents and they reject me, they abandon me, they shout at me, they remove their love essentially from me, that means I'm not good enough. If I don't know, what example can I use? If I, for example, didn't wash up the plates in the sink, and then mom or dad is like, "You're nasty, you're this, you're that, blah 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 blah." The instant thing is, I'm the problem. It's me. I'm the problem. But there probably was a good reason why I didn't do those things. So we abandon parts of ourselves to say, okay, well, this means not leaving the plates in the sink, even for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or whatever, just not good enough.
Mm.
And if I leave them in the sink, that means I'm not good enough. And we relate those things, those parts of ourselves that, like I said, whether indirectly or directly, we were told that's not good enough. So that's where trauma comes in. That's like, okay, well, every time I leave a plate in the sink, I'm gonna feel like I'm not good enough. And it might seem really extreme to jump from plate
Yeah.
in the sink to I'm not good enough, but that's essentially one of the reasons why it's so important to understand what your motivations are, what your values are, what your beliefs are, because a lot of the time when you take that time and slow down and think, okay, so what is where did I learn this? Where did I learn that, I need to make my bed every day? Where did I learn that, not making my bed every day, or going back to the rest part of our conversation, if I rest, then that means I'm not good enough. That means I'm lazy. That means, you know, I should be ashamed of myself. That means I'm not good enough. That's the way that trauma shows up and says, these parts of me are not accepted here. One of the things I will add though, Leah, is also recognizing the too much.
Mm.
We're loud,
Yeah.
especially as children. We are loud. A lot of children, not all children. We're loud. We just want to have fun. We just want to be, have a good time. And when, I don't know, we're in a private, quiet setting and we want to be singing at the top of our lungs, but shh,
Yeah.
not acceptable here. But a lot of the times, people around us, parents in general, won't necessarily always be able to say, I told you to be quiet, because when we're in a library, people are reading and you singing will distract them or interrupt what they're doing. So whilst I love your singing, there's a time and a place. Sometimes, our parents don't get to explain that to us. They're just like, you're bringing too much attention. You're being too much. So then it comes to, okay, understanding the lessons that we learn early on. How many of those lessons were we told as children that made sense as a child, that we're still holding on to now as adults, that actually as an adult I do what I want. There isn't any I'm not you don't need to wait for anyone to give you permission anymore. But a lot of the time we are waiting for someone to say, it's okay, you can be loud. Yeah.
So on that, how do mothers, how would you suggest mothers start that process of making sure that they don't implement trauma into their children, in the same way trauma was was given to us? And then for women who are struggling with, who feel like they are experiencing trauma, or they definitely have experienced trauma and they're trying to recover from it, how would
Mhm.
what advice would you give to them? So first, for like mothers who are parenting, so like myself, how would I make sure I don't traumatize or re-traumatize or continue the trauma passing on to my children? And then also, as a traumatized someone who went through my own trauma, how would I look after myself?
When you were saying that, I was like, did I say this? I don't know. Should I say this? I was thinking there's a very big part of me, somewhat professionally, somewhat personally, maybe the two of them combined, that doesn't believe that there isn't anyone in this world who has felt a level of trauma in
Mm.
their lives from their parents.
Oh yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I'm not,
So
I'm
in a
not,
way,
I'm not a counselor, but I do.
you're like, okay, yeah, 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 okay, fine.
Yeah.
In a way, I'm like, we can't we can't not traumatize our children. In a way, it kind of I'm like, if you are being a parent, fully in parent mode, you're likely to traumatize your children.
Mm,
Children are going to want to do things that are dangerous. Children are going to want to
yes.
go out at whatever time. They're going to want to, you know, push your boundaries. They're going to want to have sweets at 10 o'clock at night because they're like, yeah, of course, why not? And you're like, well, no,
Mm,
no, you can't have sweets right now. And it makes sense for that child to be upset, maybe for a tantrum. It makes sense for them to be upset by that. So, in a way, it's kind of like there are potentially going to be things that will cause trauma.
oh, you frozen, sis.
Saying,
Oh,
oh,
sorry.
I'm back. Can you hear me? So, one of the things I say to parents sometimes is recognize that there's going to be a time when your child is going to come to you and be like, well, why did you do blah, blah, blah? You know, as a side note, how amazing would it be if we could go back to our parents and be like, so, you know, that
Oh,
time when you, how amazing would it be?
yeah,
And they were receptive to be
yeah,
like, do you know what? At the time I did my best. I understand, there were probably going to be things that I did that didn't work out the best for you. But at the time I did my best and I'm really sorry that I had that impact on you because that wasn't my intention. Because that's really all we would want.
yeah,
I know that's all I would want.
yeah,
To
yeah,
just to just be like, do you know what? Yeah, I hear that.
yeah.
And that wasn't my intention. My intention was to actually protect you from this.
Mm,
And I didn't know any other way to do it
yeah,
other than telling you no, making sure you did X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. Because a lot of the time, all we want is someone, that one person
yeah.
to acknowledge the pain that was felt
Mm,
in those situations. But a lot of the time, we don't, or parents don't, um, especially older generation parents who have no idea about mental health and the impact that that has.
yeah.
They're like, accepting that a lot of the time means that they failed.
Mm,
So
yeah,
they're like, that didn't happen. I didn't do that.
yeah.
What did you want me to do? Kind of thing.
Yes,
They hear it as an attack.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, even throughout this conversation, I haven't made it very clear that this isn't about blame.
Oh, right,
This
right.
is just about acknowledging what has happened and what didn't happen. You
Mm,
know, again, in my practice, first thing I say is if you're going to tell me about your parents, okay, great. Let's talk about them. Not in a way to say what they did was wrong, what they did was
mm,
right, but actually look at what happened
yeah,
so that we can see what's happening now
yeah.
and say, is that something I want to keep going or is that something I want to let go of kind of thing? So
Mm,
that's one of the things I will say, it's more than likely that children will feel some level of trauma and grow into adulthood. But parents I would definitely say to operate from a place of I'm doing this with intention. And I said that before, intentionality is a huge thing.
yeah.
Because then if someone comes back to you and says, look, when you did this, that hurt, that really hurt me, you can then say, do you know what? I thought it might, but my options at that time were X, Y, Z.
Mm,
I didn't even see that there was an ABC. All I saw was
right.
X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keeping that in mind that if we're doing our best, that's good enough, but you have to decide that your best is good enough.
Mm. So it's like mindful parenting,
Mhm.
becoming more
Absolutely.
mindful. And obviously, as a parent, I understand, um, parenting can become very reactive because of so how many things are going on.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not impossible, but just
Mhm.
acknowledging that you want to do better than you maybe have already. What you've just said is really useful for parents to kind of bear that in mind. Because I know a lot of, and I know that I didn't even question certain things in my parenting. I was fully on autopilot for a long time until I started like listening to Gabor Mate and him speaking
Mm.
about trauma and all those kind of things. So, and then as a mother and what you just said also helps to reduce the guilt of
Yeah.
what we can potentially do to our children, but also creates a pathway to doing better. What would you advice would you give like someone like me who has been through trauma, um, as to how, as a Black woman, I can start my journey of recovery, um, from, the big trauma, the little T trauma, big T trauma. What kind of advice or tips or tools could you offer?
Yeah. Big thing. And there's a term for it, is reparenting.
Ah,
Yeah. Reparenting yourself. So, like I said, our parents more likely than not did the very best that they could with what they had. Recognizing that, okay, well, my parent didn't give me this, or whoever didn't give me that. But actually, now I have a better understanding of the world, and I can see that I really need to develop this in myself.
mm,
So let me just try to start to give myself what I would have really wanted then. Be the adult to my younger self now. And what that means essentially is being forever forgiving of yourself. That
mm,
relationship that we develop with ourselves, it has to be, it's so different to the ones that we have with anybody else. Because if someone disrespects us, if someone lets us down, you know, we can say, I don't want to be around you anymore.
yeah.
You can move country, you can block them, you can do all of this stuff, yeah. But the relationship with yourself, she's coming with you.
Yeah.
She is following you around and she's going to be like, yeah, well, next time you make a mistake, I'm going to remind you of all of the mistakes that you made in the past,
Yeah.
unless you learn to forgive her for the mistakes that she has made. Unless you learn to say to her, okay, I'm going to learn to create a safe space for you so that if you do something that isn't in line with what I would truly want for you, I'm not going to abandon you. I'm
Mm,
not going to stop feeding you. I'm not going to start hurting you. I'm not going to start engaging in activities that are, not leading anywhere. Because that's sometimes what happens in terms of self-abandonment. I'm going to give you the grace that you deserve to say, you're learning. So let's, I'm not happy with what's happened. I'm not happy with how it's turned out. But you know what? Like, I love you. And I know that I can't do anything without you being on my side. So let's move. Very quickly, there was I went on a trip to Italy. And I've spoken about this before. I went on a trip to Italy, and for some reason I decided that I was staying up some very, very high mountain. It cost me 20 euros to get up there. 5 minute drive, 20 euros. Because I was like, I don't want to walk up there. Okay, fine. So I'm up there now. This is my first day. And I am like, I've got clients, so I'm still working, but I'm like trying to navigate my time and just, be free and adventurous. I'm like, oh yeah, look at me, traveling around, going to have a therapy session or whatever. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna look at the time. I've got like an hour, and I'm like, great, okay. And someone did say to me before I went up the hill, she said, make sure you get what you need because you're probably not going to want to come back down. And I was like, that's fine. Okay. So I'm now like, okay, I've got an hour. I'm gonna see what's around. So I'll go on Google Maps, and Google Maps tells me you can go and see this. whatever. I think it was like a church or a cathedral. And I was like, oh, great. I could go quick half an hour walk around 15 minutes, come back. Half an hour walk down a mountain is not half an hour walk back up. First of all, it is not. And it was absolutely, I was so frustrated with myself because the time was ticking and I'm looking at the time. I'm like, okay, right, I need to start going back up. And the first part of the hill is steep. The first part of the climb is steep, steep. So I'm like, okay, right, let me start making my way back up. As soon as I've taken what 5 minutes, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I can't do this. I know I can't do this in half an hour. I know well, 40, technically it's 20 minutes. I know I can't do it. I thought I could. Then I'm like, okay, I'll get the bus. Me thinking the bus stop is back down the bit that I just walked. It's not. So I get down that little bit and then I realize the bus stop is back up. Anyway, long story short, I have to run my way back up because now I'm like against the clock. So I'm like, I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late. Oh my God. So at the bus stop, I'm waiting. I'm looking at the bus. It's supposed to be here. It's not here. Because I'm like, if I can get the bus, then I'll be on time. It's not here. It's not coming. It's not coming. Leah, I was like, why did I have to go down the hill? Why did I have to do this? Like I was literally like on the verge of being my biggest hater of all
Mhm.
time. And I thought, you know what? I don't have control over the bus, so I'm gonna start walking. That I do have control over. As long as it takes, I have control over how fast I move and X, Y, Z. So I started walking up and I kept saying, why did I have to do that? Why? I didn't need to go anywhere. I could have just sat and just admired the view. Oh, all of these reasons as to why I'm the bad person. And something said to me, I don't need you right now. I don't need you to be berating me when I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to get somewhere. I'm trying to get somewhere. I don't need you to tell me all the things I did wrong. I don't need you to tell me that I made a bad choice, that I'm a bad person, that I'm about to let all these people down. Because it would have been, I would have let, in my mind, I'm letting my client down. I'm letting whoever they're connected with down because they're going to have to go, maybe they won't get what they need and all of these kind of things. And I thought, you know what? I don't need that. What I do need is someone who is on my side.
Right.
So then I was like, okay, right, okay, put some music on. Bear in mind, I had no water, zero
Oh,
water. Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. Because the shopping that I did was shopping that of things I did not need. It was just, I had no business going down that hill to see any cathedral. And I was like, a couple bits too late. Anyway, so I'm walking up this big old mountain now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, blah blah blah. And I start to think, let me just give myself a break. If I had known this was going to be the case, I probably wouldn't have done it. I probably would have definitely said, I'm going to sit myself down and not do anything. I started to be kind to myself, started to work a little bit harder on okay, we can do it. Let's go. Let's go. Worst case, I'll be late. Worst case, they can't stay and I'll make it up another time. So I'm going to get to a certain point. I'm going to do what I can. Big, big moment here, looking at what you can control,
Mm.
what you can't, and accepting what the consequences of those things are. Because that client could have been like, you're late. This is terrible, or whatever. She was fine, and she wasn't a brand new client or anything like that. But recognizing it actually made the process a lot easier to
Right.
walk up that hill. But the outcome was still the same. I was still late,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I wasn't dragging this heavy boulder of a critic on my back to make it so much harder. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that Black women do. We
Oh,
tell ourselves, you're not good enough. You shouldn't be doing this. All of this imposter syndrome, you're carrying around this trauma that says, you shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be yourself. In those moments, it was the worst thing for me to abandon myself because I would have got up that hill, I would have been in a bad mood. I probably would have been late. Like I said, I was late anyway. I wouldn't have been in the right mind frame to even sit down in front of someone else to pour out.
yeah.
And I hope that that story kind of brings it back to Black women
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
general. Pouring it into yourself is not a crime. It really puts you in a position to give more. If you can be your own best friend, if you can learn to develop that relationship with yourself, you will be able to give and give and give and give, knowing that you're not going to be empty because your relationship with yourself is solid.
That's perfect. So, trauma is how we feel about our needs not being met.
Mhm,
Reparenting can help that because we can
mhm.
become the one that addresses
Yeah,
the needs that we have
yeah,
moving forward, which can
mhm,
help heal the regret, the disappointments of the past because we're creating that what we need within ourselves
yeah,
moving forward. Is that
totally.
okay? That makes a lot of sense. That's really,
Yeah,
really,
I'm glad you're able to do that because I was like telling this story. I'm like, it's important to recognize
yeah,
exactly what you said. We would love it would be amazing for people around us to be able to meet our needs for us.
yes, yeah, yeah,
It'd be amazing. It'd be so good because essentially that would mean we don't have to bother. If someone's always meeting our needs for
yeah,
us, then what's the point of having a healthy relationship with myself?
yeah.
But we can't outsource those needs being met.
Mhm.
It's still our responsibility.
Yeah,
And yes, we choose people to help us to get those needs met,
yeah,
but it starts with us being able to know that I'm confident that I can meet these needs for myself, and I'm choosing you to help me with it.
yeah. Like when you were talking, when people say like healed people heal people.
Mhm.
So when someone is going through that process of healing and they're parenting themselves, they're practicing that language. So when they're around people and the people are expressing their needs, they've already practiced being nice to themselves. So it's easier for them to be nice to someone else. But when you're
Yeah,
stuck in your trauma and you're not healed, you're practicing berating yourself. So you're more likely to
mhm.
berate everyone else because that's just what you're practicing. Because that's what I'm getting from, would that be right? That's what I'm getting from what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. If we learn to give ourselves grace, we can give other people grace too.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking about my own experience, I did not know how to give my mum grace
Mm,
until I learned to give myself grace,
right.
recognizing all of these things that I've said, in our conversation, that our parents did the best that they could with what they had. They're really regular people just figuring it out. Like they've never been here. They've never been here either,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if I can give myself grace and recognize, okay, I make mistakes. And yeah, maybe I wouldn't have made the choices that my mum made, or our parents made. Maybe, who knows? The
Yeah.
fact is, we don't live in the same reality.
Yeah.
So just recognizing them, the more we pour into ourselves and give ourselves permission to be friends with ourselves, we can be friends of other people and not want anything back, because we're like, actually, I'm just giving to give. Like me being here with you, I'm like, this is amazing. I love this. This is
Yeah.
totally in line with me. I just love pouring into Black women, especially. So
Yeah.
this isn't costing me. This is energizing me because I'm
Mm,
like, you know, I've worked on a relationship with myself. Not to say that it's perfect, but I'm
yeah.
definitely like, I I want to say I'm more healed than not healed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can pour from an overflow, and that's what Black women can do.
Mm,
Pour from their overflow by saying, I'm going to fill myself up. And I'm going to take in what people have to give me, but it's not going to be my only source of fulfillment. I'm going to learn how to fulfill myself so that I can choose what to accept, what I don't need, whatever it might be.
mm. Wonderful. That's that's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's brilliant. So that people can find you and the work that you do. Like I found you through Instagram. Um, can you share the things that you do, the services you offer, and how sisters can find you?
Yeah, of course. So I say all social media, across Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, my username is Jannelle.Johnson. Jannelle has two N's. People usually miss that out. And in terms of what I do, I show up as a therapist one of the things I had to learn is that therapy is more than just being inside the therapy room, essentially. So, I show up on social media platforms to help people take what they want, leave what they don't, essentially. Always focused around developing a healthy relationship with yourself. That's the main thing, because once we have a healthy relationship with ourselves, once we create the secure base in ourselves, we can go anywhere.
Mm,
Anywhere. We can go anywhere we want and show up and be ourselves or know why we're not showing certain parts of ourselves. Because, like I said, do it on purpose. Don't do it without realizing that you're doing
yeah,
it, essentially. So, that's one of the things that's most important to me, and recognizing that our relationships are important, our friends are important, the people that we surround ourselves are important, so if we can develop that relationship with ourselves that says, actually, I am good, I can speak up for myself if something isn't right, I can say what I love, I can embrace love, I can accept compliments, do all of those beautiful things that also are part of being around people, then that's great. You start to actually live a life of fulfillment
mm,
that is accepting of the full range of emotions. Me being here doesn't mean, or sometimes people say, therapists, you must have your life all figured out. And that's really not the case. It just means that I would say that I'm a little bit more aware of when things are not right. I still allow myself to be sad, angry, upset, annoyed, also embrace joy, and happiness, and go after things, and
mm,
actually do things rooted in why rooted in me wanting to do them, as opposed
yeah,
to doing it because I need to get something back or I need to prove, or which is something a lot of women do.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I am very passionate about doing, helping us to stop self-abandoning, do what we want to do with intention,
yeah,
um, and love ourselves a little bit more because we deserve it, essentially. And I run events well, at least every quarter. So spring, summer, autumn, and winter. I run a retreat. Um, there's spring forward. We'll miss it by the time this comes out, but there's summer rising. There's going to be autumn, where we're letting go, and then we're going to do December, which is essentially thinking about what seeds are we sowing for the future when we do spring rising again. So keeping those things in mind. There's a whole cycle that we get the privilege of seeing physically in the UK that a lot of other places in the world don't get to see.
mm,
Um, the seasons, just recognizing that. So that's one of the things that I'm really, passionate about as well. Just recognizing that we can get into alignment at any time.
yeah,
We don't have to wait until the new year. We don't have to wait until somebody says da 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 da. Whatever reason it is to wait, there's no reason.
yeah,
So keeping those things in mind, that's what I'm passionate about. Whatever I'm doing, it's always going to come back to your relationship with yourself. So
mm.
that's it.
Is there a tool or an exercise or something that you could share with the audience before we wrap up for today that we can go off and use to help that journey of starting to reconnect with ourselves or reparent ourselves or address our trauma? Just something we can kind of start working with until we are able to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Number one thing, be curious. It sounds really simple, but it is really kind of that simple. Be curious with yourself. Figure out, oh, I wonder why that's so important to me. What is it about that's so important to me? What is it about that trigger? And without going into a whole nother thing, when we're triggered, people see it as a bad thing. But when you're on your healing journey, you start to see being triggered is a gift. It's like, oh, that part still needs to be looked at. Okay, all right, fine. I hate this. It doesn't feel good. But at least now I know that I got some work to do around, I don't know, relationships,
Mm,
money, whatever it might be. Okay, so I would say be curious with yourself. A great place to start with that is doing is considering what your values are, so such as family, friendship, respect, money, health, fitness, those things, and then think, what are my beliefs around those things? What do I believe around family? What do I believe about around romantic relationships? What do I believe about who should be respected and why? What do I believe about authority? Those things. So look at what you value and think, okay, what do I believe about those things? And then think, is that going to help me? Believing that all authority is bad authority, is that going to help me? Believing that and our our family is cursed. We have a curse where, you
Yeah.
know, no, none of the women can hold down a healthy relationship because we're cursed.
Mm,
Is that a belief that is going to help you to move forward? Probably not,
mm,
you know. And really and truly, we need to realize, I hope anyway, more people were able to realize that our beliefs are what are
yeah.
driving us. And a lot of our beliefs are rooted in childlike childhood belief systems.
Mm,
So not wrong, because believing those things saved you for a long time.
mm,
But do you still need to be saved by believing that thing? Or can you say, actually, I think I can develop a new belief now because this will help me to step out of survival mode and start to embrace the wholeness of life as opposed to just staying in this little tiny box
yeah.
um, where it's safe and no one can challenge me.
Mm. Thank you, Jannelle. Thank you very much for sharing, for, being open and putting things in perspective and that tool as well. I'll be sharing all your details in the show notes, so everyone, please do feel free to go and check out Jannelle on Instagram. That's where I follow her, and I do see that she enjoys life. That is one thing.
Yeah.
That she is always smiling in the posts and always doing fun stuff. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you guys again on another episode of Naturally You Radio. You can find all the back episodes on most streaming platforms or at thenaturallyyoucoach.com/podcast. And at thenaturallyyoucoach.com is where you can see everything else we've got going on. And you can also find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Just search for the Naturally You Coach or Leah Salmon. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care and stay healthy.